Title: Every heiress sang for the Mafia Boss. Then the maid finished the song his family had forbidden. Every heiress in the Varrone ballroom knew the song was forbidden, which was why Isabella Moretti chose it. Clara Bell heard the first 3 notes while carrying a tray of untouched champagne flutes past the grand piano. Her fingers tightened around the silver handles. Across the ballroom, Mafia Boss Matteo Varrone sat at the head table in a black 3-piece suit, still as a blade under gold chandelier light. His future bride smiled beside him, beautiful enough to make cruelty look like etiquette. "Do not stand near the piano," Isabella said to Clara without looking away from the guests. "You make the room look cheap." Laughter moved through the silk and diamonds. Clara did not answer. At the piano, the hired soprano lifted the torn sheet music, looked straight at Matteo, and sang the last line wrong. Matteo's hand stopped around his glass. The room held its breath, waiting for the feared man to break. Clara set down the tray. She crossed the polished floor, closed the wrong sheet music with one firm hand, and sang the real ending herself. Not loudly. Correctly. The final note settled over the ballroom like a verdict. For one stunned second, no one remembered that Clara was only the maid. Then Matteo Varrone stood. Chapter 1. The engagement dinner had been designed to make surrender look romantic. 200 white roses climbed the marble pillars. Crystal chandeliers dropped warm light over the Varrone ballroom, turning every glass, diamond, and polished shoe into a small act of obedience. The tables were dressed in ivory linen and black ribbon. Silver place cards assigned enemies beside allies, cousins beside creditors, and women beside men who would decide their futures over veal and old wine. Clara had ironed those linens at dawn. She had polished the piano lid until her reflection looked like someone trapped under dark water. She had helped the florist hide thorns, carried crates through the service hall, and listened while the housekeeper reminded every maid that tonight was not a dinner. It was a treaty. Matteo Varrone would announce his engagement to Isabella Moretti before dessert. The Morettas controlled judges, private clinics, and a chain of banks that washed money more politely than rivers did. The Varrones controlled ports, construction, waste contracts, and the kind of old fear that made businessmen lower their voices in restaurants. Their marriage would stop a border war before winter. Everyone said so. Everyone also said Matteo had agreed. Clara Bell had worked in the Varrone mansion long enough to know agreement had many disguises. Sometimes it wore a signature. Sometimes a smile. Sometimes a man sitting very still while a beautiful woman arranged his future like flowers. She had been hired 8 months earlier as a temporary kitchen maid and kept because she did not gossip, did not break crystal, and could hear a boiling pot from 2 rooms away. She was 34, broad-hipped, brown-skinned, and built with the kind of softness wealthy women praised on paintings and punished on servants. Her black dress was plain, her apron white, her dark curls twisted into a low knot tight enough to survive heat, steam, and disapproval. Most guests saw none of that. They saw a woman who refilled glasses. That was useful. Being unseen gave Clara the whole room. She noticed how Isabella touched Matteo's sleeve only when people watched. She noticed how Matteo never leaned toward her. She noticed how the old Varrone aunt in the corner, Zia Rosaria, closed her eyes every time someone mentioned family unity. She noticed the hired soprano's hands shaking before she sang, and the small tear in the lower corner of the sheet music, repaired badly with clear tape. That tear mattered. Music paper did not tear that way from age. It tore when someone pulled a page out quickly, then shoved it back before the crease could settle. Clara knew sheet music. She had not always been a maid. Before her mother's lungs filled with factory dust, before bills ate the church choir stipend, before the landlord learned to knock with the flat of his hand, Clara had sung in St. Agnes on Laurel Street. She had sung funerals, baptisms, weddings, and one disastrous Christmas service where the organist fainted and Clara carried 3 verses alone while a deacon waved smelling salts like incense. She could not read music like a conservatory girl, but she knew structure, breath, phrasing, and the truth that lived in a song when it had been carried by working women long before it reached a polished room. The forbidden song was older than the chandelier. In the mansion, no one said its title above a whisper. The official story was simple: Matteo's younger sister, Lucia, had loved the song. She sang it the night before she disappeared during a family uprising 12 years ago. The next morning, the Varrones found her scarf near the east gate and never found her alive. After that, the song vanished from the house. No pianist rehearsed it. No guest requested it. No one hummed it near the kitchen unless they wanted the room to go cold. Clara had learned the real ending from women who washed dishes after funerals. Her mother had worked in this mansion before Clara was born, back when the Varrone family still held wakes upstairs and fed mourners from copper pots below. The kitchen women had remembered songs differently than the family did. They remembered who cried, who lied, who sent plates back untouched, and which daughters slipped into the pantry to breathe because grief upstairs had too many rules. The old song's last line was not grand. It was not tragic. It was a promise to leave the lamp burning in the kitchen window. That was why the wrong version hurt. The soprano sang the elegant printed ending, the version sold in antique music shops and performed by women who had never washed a pot after midnight. She sang of love sleeping in marble halls, and the ballroom waited for Matteo to flinch. Clara saw the trap at once. It was not nostalgia. It was provocation. Isabella Moretti sat beside Matteo with her chin lifted, blue silk shining across her narrow shoulders. She did not look at the soprano. She looked at Matteo's hand around the glass. She wanted him to shatter it. She wanted the Varrones to see him unstable. She wanted the Morettis to gain the marriage and the leash. Clara, the housekeeper hissed from the service door, step back. Clara stepped forward. Chapter 2. The ballroom heard her shoes before it understood her intention. Maid's shoes were supposed to be quiet. Clara's were not. They struck the marble with a measured, practical sound learned from kitchen corridors and church aisles. A few heads turned, annoyed before curious. The soprano, still holding the last note incorrectly, saw Clara approach and faltered. Isabella's smile hardened. "What are you doing?" she asked. Clara did not answer her. She set the silver tray on the piano bench, placed one hand on the torn sheet music, and closed it. The soprano gasped. "You cannot touch that." "I just did," Clara said. The room went very still. At the head table, Matteo Varrone's eyes lifted to her. Clara had served him coffee at 6 in the morning, water at midnight, and once a bowl of soup after he returned from a meeting with blood on his cuff that was not his. He said thank you. He remembered staff names. He looked at people directly, which made him more dangerous, not less, because it was impossible to pretend he did not understand what he saw. Now he looked at Clara as if she had stepped into a room in his memory without knocking. Isabella laughed lightly. "How charming. The maid has opinions about music." "The maid has ears," Clara said. Someone inhaled too sharply. The soprano clutched the closed pages. "I performed what I was given." "I know." The soprano's face changed, fear cutting through professional offense. Good, Clara thought. Fear belonged on the correct face. Isabella rose halfway from her chair. "Clara, return to the kitchen before I have you dismissed." Clara turned toward her at last. "Dismiss me after dessert. This line comes first." The guests did not laugh. They were too busy recalculating what kind of servant answered an heiress that way. Matteo remained standing now. Clara had not seen him rise. One moment he sat with his hand on the glass, the next he stood behind the head table, black suit under gold light, shoulders broad, face unreadable, and every guard in the room newly awake. "Let her finish," he said. 3 words changed the ownership of the room. Isabella's expression tightened. "Matteo, darling, this is absurd." She interrupted a guest. "Yes," he said. "A maid interrupted your engagement dinner." "I noticed." That should not have pleased Clara. It did. The soprano stepped back from the piano, giving Clara space with visible relief. Clara looked at the guests, the roses, the chandelier, the men who wanted power without mess, and the women who had learned to weaponize beauty because no one gave them armies. Then she sang. Not the whole song. Only the final line. The real final line. Her voice was lower than the soprano's, warmer, less polished, and more dangerous because it did not beg permission from the room. It carried kitchen tile, old grief, steam, church rafters, her mother's tired hands, and all the women who had kept lamps burning while men upstairs renamed survival as loyalty. She did not sing loudly. Correctness did not need volume. When the last note ended, Zia Rosaria covered her mouth. Matteo's face changed. Not broken. Not softened. Opened, for one unguarded second, as if someone had unlocked a door he had believed was sealed from the other side. "Who taught you that ending?" he asked. Clara looked at the torn sheet music beneath her hand. "Women your family forgot to invite upstairs." The answer moved through the ballroom like a draft under a locked door. Isabella's eyes flashed. "This is outrageous." Matteo did not look at her. "The page," he said to Clara. Clara lifted the sheet music. The lower corner was torn, and beneath the repair tape, a second strip of paper had been pasted over the final line. The printed lyrics belonged to the elegant version. Under the taped edge, visible where the tear had pulled, was the old handwritten ending. Kitchen window. Lamp. Come home. No one needed to read the words to understand the room had been given a false song. Matteo walked toward the piano. His guards moved with him, but he lifted one hand and they stopped 3 paces behind. He came close enough that Clara could see the faint silver at his temples and the old exhaustion under the discipline of his face. "May I see it?" The question startled her more than a command would have. She handed him the torn sheet music. He took it with care. Not reverence. Care. His thumb rested beside the taped corner, not over it. For a moment, he was no longer the head of the Varrone family. He was a brother reading a message too late. Then Isabella spoke. It was a mistake in the archive, she said, voice bright with strain. Someone must have pulled the wrong version. The poor girl is making drama out of dust. Clara smiled once. It was not kind. Then why did you tell Elise to sing the covered line twice before dinner? The soprano froze. Matteo looked up. Isabella's color changed. Clara kept her hand on the piano because her knees had started to understand the cost of what her mouth was doing. I was carrying champagne behind the south screen, she said. You told her to look at Mr. Varrone when she sang it. You said if he lost control, the council would finally see the problem. Silence. The chandelier hummed above them. Then Matteo turned toward his future bride. The problem, he repeated. Chapter 3. Isabella Moretti had been trained for rooms like this. She did not panic. She lowered her lashes, placed one hand delicately against her chest, and let hurt arrive on her face with the timing of a woman who had rehearsed tenderness before mirrors. Matteo, she said, you cannot be serious. You are taking the word of a servant who was eavesdropping behind a screen. Clara felt the old word land. Servant. Not staff. Not Clara. Servant. A word designed to fold a person back into function. She lifted her chin. I was working, she said. Eavesdropping is what rich people call hearing while employed. Someone near the second table choked on wine. Matteo's mouth moved, but no smile appeared. His attention stayed on Isabella. Did you tell Elise to sing it? I approved the entertainment. Did you tell her to sing the covered line? Isabella's eyes flicked toward the soprano. Elise looked as if she wanted the piano to swallow her. She was young, perhaps 25, with the rigid posture of someone educated in beauty and fear. Her hand trembled around the microphone. Matteo saw that too. Miss Bell, he said. Clara blinked. He had used her name before. Never like that. Yes? Was Elise threatened? The soprano made a small sound. Isabella laughed. This is becoming a farce. Clara looked at Elise. You do not have to answer me. But if someone threatened your contract, your mother's apartment, or the visa of someone in your family, look at the piano keys. Elise looked down. Not subtly. Every face turned. Isabella's sweetness vanished for half a second, and what showed underneath was all calculation. Enough, she said. I will not be cross-examined by household staff at my own engagement dinner. It is not your engagement dinner yet, Matteo said. Those words did what Clara's song had not. They frightened Isabella. Not because of love. Clara saw that clearly. Isabella did not love Matteo, she wanted the seat beside him, the signature, the combined family shield. But women like Isabella knew the value of almost. Almost married. Almost untouchable. Almost powerful enough to rewrite tonight by morning. Matteo still held the torn sheet music. Bring me the archive box, he said. An older footman near the doors shifted uncomfortably. Sir, the music archive is in the East Gallery, and the key dash. I have the key, Isabella said quickly. Too quickly. Clara closed her eyes for half a second. There. The next card in the trick. When she opened them, Matteo was looking at her. He had seen her hear it. That was the first truly dangerous moment between them. Not the song. Not the accusation. Not even the way his future bride had flinched. It was the discovery that Matteo Varrone, feared by men who owned judges, had started reading Clara Bell's face for truth. Miss Bell, he asked. Clara chose each word carefully. No one keeps the only key to an old music archive with the bride unless the archive was never meant to be neutral. Isabella snapped, You know nothing about this family. Clara looked at her. I know who eats after midnight. The words confused the guests. They did not confuse Zia Rosaria. The old woman's eyes filled, and she whispered, Lucia. Matteo's fingers tightened on the page. Clara turned toward him because the truth had already reached the door, and half-truths were how powerful houses taught women to choke. Your sister came to the kitchen, Clara said. Not once. Often. The women there fed her when upstairs dinners lasted too long. She sang the old version because the kitchen women knew it. My mother worked here then. Matteo stared at her. Your mother? Maribel Bell. Laundry first, then pastry, then night kitchen when her lungs got bad. Zia Rosaria made a broken sound. Maribel had the honey voice. Clara swallowed. Her mother had been dead 7 years, but grief remained rude enough to arrive without appointment. Yes, Clara said. Matteo looked at the torn sheet music as if it had grown heavier. My sister sang with your mother. In the kitchen, Clara said. Where no one upstairs heard unless they needed something carried. Isabella recovered enough to laugh again, but the sound had lost polish. What a touching servant legend. Shall we halt a family alliance because a maid's mother hummed near a sink? Matteo turned to her. Yes. The ballroom forgot to breathe. If the sink remembers more than the bride, he said, yes. Chapter 4. Clara should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt the kitchen door behind her like an exit she had betrayed. There were rules for women who worked in houses like this. Be useful. Be quiet. Never become the story. The moment you became the story, every powerful person needed either to own you, punish you, or explain you away. Isabella would choose punishment. Matteo Varrone was harder to read. He sent 2 men for the archive box, but not before asking Zia Rosaria if she wanted a chair brought nearer to the piano. He told Elise she could sit and that no contract connected to the Moretti family would be enforced tonight. He told the guests dinner would pause. That was how he put it. Pause. As if the entire ballroom were an orchestra and he had merely raised one hand. Clara reached for the tray she had abandoned on the piano bench. Leave it, Matteo said. She looked at him. It is my job. Not right now. That irritated her. With respect, Mr. Varrone, powerful men always know when a woman's job should stop being useful to them. Several guests stared at her as if she had slapped marble. Matteo absorbed the sentence with unsettling patience. Fair, he said. Fair. One word, and her irritation lost the wall it meant to climb. He stepped aside. Then set it down where you choose, and come back if you choose. That was worse. Choice was much harder to distrust than command. Clara carried the tray to the service table. Her hands were steady, but the rest of her had started shaking in delayed fragments. In the service corridor, the housekeeper, Mrs. Vale, grabbed her elbow. Have you lost your mind? Several times, Clara said. Tonight just had witnesses. The Morettis will bury you. They can get in line. Mrs. Vale's mouth trembled between anger and fear. This is not a church basement, Clara. These people do not forgive embarrassment. Neither do I. That made the older woman blink. Clara softened because Mrs. Vale was not the enemy. She was a woman paid to keep other women safe by teaching them how to survive ceilings built too low. Elise was going to be blamed, Clara said. Maybe one of our girls too. The wrong page came from somewhere. Mrs. Vale glanced toward the ballroom. Serena. Clara's stomach dropped. Serena was 19, newly hired, and so anxious she apologized to chairs after bumping them. She had been assigned to the East Gallery that afternoon to dust the music cabinets. Where is she? Clara asked. Pantry. Crying. Clara moved. The pantry was narrow, lined with flour bins, copper molds, and shelves of preserved lemons. Serena sat on an overturned crate, apron twisted in both hands, face swollen from tears. I didn't know, she whispered as soon as Clara entered. Miss Moretti said the archive box was needed in the ballroom. She gave me the key. She told me to bring the torn pages to the music stand, but she said they were family tradition. I didn't know. Clara crouched in front of her. Look at me. Serena tried and failed. No one buys your shame with a key, Clara said. Do you understand? She handed you a task without truth. That is not the same as guilt. The girl began crying harder. Clara put a hand over hers. I need you to tell Mr. Varrone what happened. Serena went rigid. I can't. You can. They'll fire me. Maybe. My brother's school fees dash. I know. That was the cruelty of houses like this. They never threatened only the person holding the tray. They threatened brothers, mothers, rent, visas, medication, the future stacked behind each woman's spine. Then I will say it, Clara said. You only nod if it is true. Why would you do that? Clara smiled sadly. Because women did it for my mother. When they returned to the ballroom, the archive box had arrived. It was dark wood, brass-cornered, and older than several of the men pretending not to sweat. Matteo stood beside it at the piano. Isabella stood opposite him, face bright with controlled fury. Zia Rosaria sat close enough to touch the box but had not. The room looked at Clara when she entered with Serena. Clara hated that. She also understood its use. Matteo's gaze moved from her face to Serena's tears, then back. Miss Bell, he said quietly. Serena was given the key, Clara said. She was told to bring the torn pages down. She was not told the line had been covered or that Elise had been threatened. Isabella's laugh was immediate. Now she brings another maid to perform innocence. Serena flinched. Clara stepped half a pace in front of her. Not enough to hide her. Enough to stand with her. Ask your bride how she got the key, Clara said. Matteo looked at Isabella. Isabella looked at the archive box. That was answer enough for Clara. But Matteo needed more than instinct. Powerful men could act on instinct and call it judgment. Clara wanted truth too solid for reinterpretation. Open the box, she said. Isabella's eyes flashed. You do not give orders here. Clara met her gaze. Then consider it a song request. Zia Rosaria made a sound that might have become laughter if grief had not caught it. Matteo opened the archive box. Inside were old music folders, ribbon-bound programs, a cracked leather metronome, and a stack of handwritten pages wrapped in blue cloth. He lifted the blue cloth bundle. Zia Rosaria whispered, Lucia's. The name changed Matteo's hands. He untied the ribbon slowly. On top lay a page in young handwriting. Not the polished music script of an archivist, but a girl's notes, crooked measures, kitchen stains, little corrections in 2 inks. Clara saw her mother's handwriting in the margin. Maribel, breathe here, child. The room blurred. She had not expected that. Matteo saw it before she could hide it. He did not ask in front of everyone. He only turned the page so she could read without stepping closer. For a man raised in power, it was an unusually gentle mercy. Chapter 5. The handwritten page proved 3 things at once. The old version existed. Lucia Varrone had written it down. Maribel Bell had corrected the breathing mark beside the final line. Clara's mother had touched this paper. The realization struck Clara with such force that for a moment she was no longer in a ballroom full of dangerous people. She was 11 years old in a narrow apartment, watching her mother soak tired hands in a chipped bowl while humming a melody she never explained. She remembered asking why the song made her sad. Her mother had answered, some songs are ladders, baby. They help the dead climb down for 1 minute. Clara had not understood. Now she did, and it hurt. Matteo looked at the page for a long time. The guests shifted, uncomfortable with grief that could not be turned into gossip quickly enough. Isabella broke first. A kitchen annotation proves nothing except that servants touched family property. Matteo's head lifted. Clara felt the room brace. His voice, when it came, was calm. Say that again. Isabella realized her mistake too late. I mean only that household staff often handled things beyond their station. Beyond their station, Matteo repeated. Clara did not need him to defend her. She did not want to become a symbol in a man's argument with his bride. But she did want him to understand the shape of the insult. Not to her alone. To every woman whose hands had kept his family fed while its men confused silence with loyalty. He seemed to. My sister wrote this in the kitchen, he said. Zia Rosaria nodded through tears. She liked it there. The women let her be a child. That sentence did more damage than accusation. Matteo looked back at the page. Who covered the line? Silence. Clara noticed the old family lawyer at table 3 reach for his inner pocket, then stop when one of Matteo's guards looked at him. She noticed Isabella's father, Don Carlo Moretti, lean toward his son, lips barely moving. She noticed the Moretti son look not at Isabella, but at the piano bench. The piano bench. Clara turned. Under the bench, where she had set the champagne tray earlier, a corner of paper stuck out beside the brass pedal. Not music paper. Thicker. Cream-colored. Folded once. She walked to it. Clara, Mrs. Vale whispered from the service doorway, horrified. Clara picked up the paper. It was a seating card from the printer's batch, blank on one side and written on the other in a slanted hand. The ink had smudged where a damp glass must have touched it. She read the first line and felt cold anger bloom. If he breaks in front of counsel, press the instability clause before dessert. She looked at Isabella. The heiress's face had gone perfectly still. What is it? Matteo asked. Clara handed him the card. He read it. No one breathed. He passed it to Zia Rosaria, then to the family lawyer, whose face turned gray. Instability clause, Matteo said. The lawyer swallowed. A provision in the alliance draft. I know what it is. Of course he did. Clara had heard enough from hallway whispers to understand. If Matteo was judged emotionally unfit by the combined council during the engagement period, a temporary governance panel could take control of disputed assets until marriage. The Morettis would hold 2 seats. Dominic Varrone, Matteo's cousin and longtime rival, would hold one. Isabella would hold one after the wedding. The forbidden song had not been cruelty alone. It had been a lever. Make him break. Call it instability. Take the ports without a war. Matteo looked at Isabella. You used Lucia. For the first time, Isabella lost elegance. You use her every day, she snapped. You built a shrine out of grief and made every room in this house obey it. Do you think no one notices? You cannot hear a piano without leaving. You cannot say your sister's name without freezing the table. You call that strength because men are afraid to correct you. There was enough truth in it to wound. Clara saw the line hit him. That was Isabella's gift. She wrapped blades in facts. Matteo's face closed. The room leaned toward the expected version of him, the feared man, the temper, the proof of instability Isabella wanted. Clara stepped between him and the piano. Not to protect Isabella. To break the script. She is doing it again, Clara said. Matteo's eyes found hers. One true thing inside a trap, Clara said. Do not answer the true thing in the room she built for the trap. The words were not polished. They were exactly enough. Matteo inhaled. Slowly. Once. Twice. His hand opened at his side. The glass on the table remained unbroken. Isabella stared at Clara with open hatred. Matteo turned to the council table. The engagement is ended, he said. Carlo Moretti rose. You will not humiliate my daughter because a maid has a pretty voice. Matteo looked at him. No. I will humiliate your family because you tried to turn my sister's memory into a legal instrument. The sentence was quiet. It landed like a door sealed from the inside. Chapter 6. After the Morettis were escorted from the ballroom, dinner did not resume. No one wanted veal after watching a marriage treaty collapse under a torn song. Guests left in careful clusters, faces arranged into sympathy, curiosity, and strategic amnesia. The musicians packed without meeting Clara's eyes. Elise hugged Serena in the service corridor and cried into her shoulder until both women began laughing from exhaustion. Clara returned to the kitchen because kitchens told the truth faster than ballrooms. The staff had gathered near the prep table: Mrs. Vale, 2 footmen, 3 maids, the pastry cook, Serena, and old Paolo from the wine cellar, who had worked in the mansion since before Matteo's father grew a beard. No one spoke at first. They looked at Clara as if she had returned from a war wearing an apron. Then Paolo crossed himself. Maribel would have thrown a spoon at you, he said. Clara blinked. For singing in front of Morettis, he explained. Then she would have bragged until Christmas. The kitchen exhaled into laughter and tears. Clara pressed both hands to the stainless steel table. She had not realized how badly she needed the table. Mrs. Vale came beside her. You understand you cannot remain just kitchen staff after this. I like kitchen staff. So do I. That is not what I said. Serena touched Clara's sleeve. Will they come back? The Morettis? The girl nodded. Clara looked at the service door, where 2 Varrone guards now stood. Matteo had placed them there without making an announcement. One was a woman Clara had seen only twice before, tall, gray-haired, and unimpressed by everyone. Good. Not tonight, Clara said. And tomorrow? Before Clara could answer, Matteo entered the kitchen. The entire staff straightened so quickly that a spoon rolled off the counter. Matteo stopped just inside the doorway. He had removed his jacket. His black waistcoat remained sharp, his sleeves still buttoned, but something in his face had changed now that the ballroom had emptied. He looked less like the head of a family and more like a man who had survived being watched. Do not stop working on my account, he said. No one moved. Clara almost smiled. That never works, she said. His eyes turned to her. I am learning. Mrs. Vale made a small sound, possibly from shock at hearing Matteo Varrone admit learning in a kitchen. He held the torn sheet music in one hand and Lucia's handwritten page in the other. He placed both on the stainless steel table, carefully away from flour and water. I wanted to ask you here, he said. Clara's throat tightened at the word ask. He could have summoned her to the study, the library, the council room, any place where his power had furniture. Instead, he had come to the kitchen, where her mother's handwriting had probably been born from a pencil borrowed beside a sink. Ask what? The staff tried very hard not to listen. They failed completely. Who taught you the real ending? Clara looked at the page. My mother. Not directly. She sang while she worked. I learned it the way children learn weather. Matteo nodded once. Did she know Lucia? I think so. Did she ever speak of her? Clara could have softened the answer. She did not. She said Lucia was lonely in a house full of people paid to call her lucky. The kitchen went still. Matteo looked down at the table. Clara regretted the cruelty for half a second, then decided truth was only cruelty when someone had invested in the lie. She also said your sister made the night kitchen sing harmony because she hated sad endings. That reached him differently. His thumb brushed the edge of the handwritten page. I did not know she came down here. Clara's voice softened despite herself. Maybe she needed a room where no one needed her to be a Varrone. Matteo closed his eyes. Only briefly. When he opened them, he looked at the staff. All of you may stay or go. No one is required to witness family grief. No one left. That seemed to surprise him. It should not have. Kitchens knew grief better than ballrooms. Mrs. Vale folded her arms. Say what you came to say, sir. Matteo looked at the housekeeper, and for one absurd second Clara thought Mrs. Vale might have just ordered a mafia boss to use his words. He obeyed. I have been listening to the wrong rooms. The sentence entered Clara before she could guard against it. He turned back to her. Tonight, you corrected a song, protected Elise, protected Serena, and stopped me from giving Isabella the reaction she wanted. I interrupted your engagement dinner. Yes. I embarrassed your guests. Yes. I spoke beyond my station. His eyes hardened. No. The kitchen seemed to lean closer. Matteo placed one hand flat on the steel table beside the torn sheet music. No one in this house will use that phrase again. Clara believed he meant it. She also knew rules spoken by powerful men could become cages if no one wrote them down. Put it in staff policy, she said. Mrs. Vale coughed. Paolo stared at the ceiling as if praying for her survival. Matteo looked at Clara for a long moment. Then he said, write it with me. That was the quiet turn, though neither of them named it. Not a gift. Not a rescue. Not a ring. A rule. Written together. Chapter 7. At 2 in the morning, Clara sat across from Matteo Varrone at the kitchen prep table, drafting a staff dignity policy on the back of a catering invoice. It was not how she had imagined the night ending. If she had imagined surviving at all, she would have pictured herself dismissed, blacklisted, perhaps escorted to the gate while Isabella smiled from an upstairs window. Instead, Mrs. Vale brewed coffee so strong it could defend itself, Paolo brought almond biscuits, and Matteo read Clara's sentences with the intensity of a man studying a treaty. No household employee may be punished for correcting false testimony, he read. Or false performance, Clara said. He wrote it down. No staff member may be compelled to accept blame for an action ordered by a guest. Good. No staff member may be addressed as though their labor reduces their personhood. Clara looked at him. That one sounds like you. It does. Too formal. You prefer? No one gets to call us less than our names. He wrote that down instead. Clara stared. You changed it. It was better. That easy? Should it be difficult? For men like you, usually. His mouth moved. Men like me are often inefficient. She laughed before she could stop herself. The sound startled them both. Matteo looked up. There it was again, that focused attention. Not hunger exactly, though something in it warmed the air between them. Not curiosity alone either. It was the look of a man who had spent his life reading threats and had discovered a woman he wanted to read carefully enough not to damage. Clara did not know what to do with that. So she corrected his punctuation. Comma there, she said. He looked at the page. Where? After guests. You are strict. You are underpunctuated. Aggrave flow. Among others. The kitchen had emptied gradually. Serena had gone to sleep in the staff room after Mrs. Vale threatened to make her peel potatoes for 12 hours if she kept apologizing. Paolo had taken the biscuits away because Matteo ate only one and Paolo considered that disrespect. The guards remained outside the door. Inside, the kitchen lights hummed over steel, tile, and the torn sheet music sealed now in a clear sleeve beside Lucia's handwritten page. Matteo's gaze moved to the page. Will you sing it again? Clara's hand stilled. Not for a room. For me? The question should have sounded like entitlement. It did not. That was the problem. It sounded like hunger he had put on a leash and brought to the table for her inspection. That song is not a performance, she said. I know. Do you? He took his time answering. No, he said. But I would like to. That answer was unfair. Clara stood because sitting had become too intimate. Then not here. He rose as well. Where? She gathered the sealed pages. The pantry. His eyebrows lifted. Your sister sang there, Clara said. My mother corrected her breathing there. If you want to hear it where it lived. They walked through the back kitchen to the narrow pantry lined with flour bins, copper molds, and shelves of preserves. The air smelled of lemon peel, sugar, and old wood. Clara switched on the small overhead light. It flickered once, then steadied. Matteo stood in the doorway. Come in, she said. The flour is not armed. He stepped inside. The pantry was too small for his presence. Not physically, though his shoulders nearly filled the narrow space, but historically. Men like Matteo did not enter pantries unless food was being brought out. Yet he stood there, black suit among flour sacks, and looked more uncertain than he had in the ballroom. Good, Clara thought. Uncertainty could be honest if a man did not resent it. She set Lucia's page on a shelf. No audience, she said. No audience. No applause. No applause. No turning it into a memorial performance for donors. His face tightened. No. She believed that no. So she sang. The old version filled the pantry differently than it had filled the ballroom. It did not need to fight chandeliers or social power. It moved between flour bins and copper molds like it recognized the walls. Clara sang the melody her mother had carried through exhaustion. She sang Lucia's corrected breath. She sang the final line about the kitchen lamp without ornament, because some promises were beautiful only when left plain. When she finished, Matteo was looking at the floor. His hands were open at his sides. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered, she was 16. Clara's chest hurt. I know. I made myself remember her as older. It was easier. Grief edits. He looked at her then. You speak as if you have had practice. My mother died by inches. Practice was not optional. I am sorry. I know. The words echoed his earlier silence in the ballroom. A strange loop. A strange tenderness. Matteo reached toward the shelf, then stopped. May I? She nodded. He touched the edge of Lucia's handwritten page, not the ink, only the margin. Thank you, he said. For singing? For not letting them use her. Clara looked at him carefully. Do not make me noble. I was angry. Anger has saved better people than obedience. She had no answer for that. The pantry seemed smaller. Matteo stepped back first. She noticed. He gave her space not because he lacked desire, but because he understood desire could become another chandelier if hung above a woman without asking. At the kitchen door, he paused. Clara. She looked up. Will you help me find out who gave Isabella access to the archive? You have lawyers. Yes. Guards. Yes. Cousins with ugly tempers. Several. Then why ask me? Because you heard the song correctly. It was too simple an answer to dismiss. Clara folded the staff policy draft and tucked it under the clear sleeve. Then we start with the laundry ledger, she said. His eyes sharpened. Why? Because old houses hide keys in linen carts, not libraries. For the first time that night, Matteo Varrone smiled. It was small, tired, and devastating. Lead the way, Miss Bell. Chapter 8. By sunrise, Clara had found 3 things no lawyer would have looked for. First, the East Gallery archive key had been wrapped in a white dinner napkin and moved through the laundry chute at 4:17 that afternoon. She knew because napkins from the family wing were folded in a triangle, but banquet napkins were folded flat, and one triangle folded napkin had arrived stained with graphite from the archive lock. Second, Serena had not been the first staff member handed the key. A footman named Lewis had carried it from the upstairs sitting room to the flower corridor, where Isabella's brother took it for 6 minutes under the excuse of fixing a cuff link. Third, the torn sheet music had been copied. That last discovery mattered most. Clara found the copy paper in the old laundry ledger, tucked between pages recording tablecloth counts from 12 years ago. The copied final line had been marked in blue pencil. Beside it, someone had written, use the polished ending. Hide the kitchen line. He will know enough to break. Matteo read the note once. Then again. His face did not change, which meant the anger had gone somewhere deep. That handwriting, Clara said. I know it. Moretti? No. He looked toward the hall. My cousin Dominic. Not the same Dominic from another story. This Dominic Varrone was a different branch of the family, a man who had sat near the council table all night with sympathetic eyes and a mouth full of concern. Clara remembered him now. He had been the first to suggest privately that Matteo looked unwell during the song. Of course. Men who prepared traps often arrived early to name the fall. He wanted the instability clause triggered, Clara said. With Moretti help. Or he helped the Morettis and planned to inherit the aftermath. Matteo looked at her. You are good at conspiracy. I am good at laundry. Apparently they overlap. Rich people put everything dirty in linen. He almost smiled, then did not. The note in his hand had returned him to war. Clara watched the black suit settle back over the wounded brother. She understood why. The world did not give men like Matteo long to be human before demanding they become architecture again. What will you do? She asked. Call counsel. And? Show them the note. That is not enough. He turned. She held his gaze. The note proves a scheme. It does not prove you are stable. If the room already wants to see grief as weakness, they will say you were manipulated by a maid with a song. They can try. They will. What do you suggest? Clara looked at Lucia's page, the torn sheet, the laundry ledger, the copied note, and the staff policy draft. Do not defend your feelings. Make them defend their math. His expression shifted. Meaning? The instability clause gives them temporary control of disputed assets, correct? Yes. Then someone had already prepared transfer orders. Matteo went still. Clara continued. No one risks a public emotional trap without documents ready. Find the draft transfers. The song was the match, not the firewood. He stared at her for 3 seconds too long. What? She asked. I am deciding whether to be impressed or alarmed. Do both quietly. He stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. Work with me today. I have already worked all night. Paid. I assumed. Protected. Careful. He nodded once. Protected if you request it. Not confined. Not escorted without consent. Not watched inside your own life. That was a better answer than she expected. And if I say no? I will find another way and still change the staff policy. Clara believed him again. This was becoming inconvenient. Coffee first, she said. Of course. Not mansion coffee. Kitchen coffee. I will survive. Bold claim. They drank coffee in the laundry office, where the machines thumped in the next room and dawn crept gray through the high windows. Matteo removed his tie. Clara pretended not to notice how that made him look less like a portrait and more like a man who had not slept. He pretended not to notice her noticing. The council met at 10. Clara attended in a borrowed black dress from Mrs. Vale, still wearing her maid's shoes because she refused to wobble in someone else's idea of dignity. Matteo did not introduce her as staff. He did not introduce her as a singer. He did not introduce her with possessive drama. "This is Clara Bell," he said. She heard the false note before any man at this table heard the theft behind it. The council room had 12 men, 3 women, and no patience for a maid at the table. Clara sat anyway. Dominic Varrone smiled with his entire mouth and none of his eyes. How fascinating. Are we now taking audit direction from household entertainment? Matteo's hand tightened on the chair back. Clara spoke before he could. No. You are taking it from laundry. She opened the ledger. Chapter 9. The council underestimated laundry. That was their first mistake. Their second was underestimating Clara's patience for men who treated paper as a language only they spoke. She laid out the sequence slowly: archive key, napkin fold, graphite stain, Lewis's handoff, Moretti brothers 6-minute gap, copied sheet music, Dominic's handwriting, instability clause, and the missing transfer draft that had not yet been found but had almost certainly been prepared. Dominic leaned back with indulgent boredom. A charming story. Thank you, Clara said. I practice un pot. One councilwoman, Bianca Varrone, covered a smile with her fingers. Matteo stood behind Clara's chair, not sitting, not looming over her, but close enough that the room remembered she had not wandered in by mistake. Dominic spread his hands. Even if this little domestic trail were accurate, it proves only that Miss Moretti behaved poorly. It does not prove theft. Correct, Clara said. That surprised him. She turned to Matteo. May I have the port schedule you mentioned? He handed her a folder. Dominic's smile thinned. Clara opened the folder and removed 3 pages. Your disputed assets under the instability clause are listed here. Port security, cold chain warehousing, waste transfer permits, and 3 clinic donation channels. Bianca leaned forward. Clinics? Yes, Clara said. That seemed odd. Why include clinics in an emotional fitness clause triggered at an engagement dinner? No one answered. Clara placed the copied sheet music beside the port schedule. Because the Moretti banks hold clinic debt. If the panel took temporary control, they could restructure those donation channels into bank-managed accounts. Dominic laughed lightly. This is amateur speculation. It was, Clara said. Until I checked the flower invoices. Matteo looked at her. She had not told him that part. Clara removed 1 more page from the ledger. The white roses for last night were paid through a Moretti Clinic Foundation account, not the wedding account. Same routing number appears in the draft transfer code printed at the bottom of the port schedule. Bianca took the page. Dominic's smile disappeared. Where did you get this? He asked. From a trash bag, Clara said. People throw away invoices when they think maids cannot read. The room shifted. This was the moment Clara liked best in any argument, when people stopped judging the vessel and started fearing the contents. Matteo's voice was quiet behind her. Dominic. The cousin's eyes moved toward him. You are letting grief and attraction embarrass you. There it was. The attempt to shrink the evidence into desire. Clara felt heat rise in her face, not from shame but fury. Matteo did not answer. Instead he stepped back. Not away from her. Away from the center. Giving her the room. Clara looked at Dominic. If he were led by attraction, he would have interrupted me by now to look protective. Bianca made a sound that might have been a cough. He is not the one embarrassing himself, Clara continued. You prepared a trap that required 3 assumptions: that he would break, that the council would enjoy calling it concern, and that no woman carrying linens would understand paperwork. Dominic stood. This is obscene. No, Clara said. It is organized. Matteo picked up the rose invoice and passed it to Bianca, then to the family lawyer. The lawyer read for a long moment, then removed his glasses. The routing number matches, he said. Dominic went pale. Not enough for guests to see, perhaps. Enough for laundry. The council did not erupt. Powerful rooms rarely erupted when money appeared in the wrong column. They calcified. Decisions traveled silently through eyes, nods, tiny shifts of allegiance. Matteo waited. That was the thing Clara noticed. The old version of him, the one Isabella expected, might have struck the table, shouted betrayal, turned grief into spectacle. This Matteo waited while the evidence moved around the room. He did not break. He did not perform strength. He let the trap fail in public. At last Bianca looked at him. The instability clause is void, she said. Pending formal review. The lawyer nodded. Agreed. Another man followed. Then another. Dominic sat down slowly, as if his knees had lost confidence in the floor. Matteo looked at Clara. There was gratitude in his face. There was something else too, something that felt like a hand extended across a room but not yet touching. Clara looked away before she forgot they had an audience. Chapter 10. By evening, the mansion knew Clara's name. That was not entirely pleasant. Names could be gifts, but they could also become hooks. Staff whispered it with pride in the laundry room, awe in the pantry, and concern near the back stairs. Guests who had stayed in the family wing watched her pass with the uncomfortable fascination of people seeing furniture speak. A young guard opened a door for her and said, "Miss Bell," with such earnest respect that Clara almost tripped. Mrs. Vale cornered her near the linen closet. "You need rest." "I need a different face. This one keeps getting recognized." "You need food." "Also true." "And you need to decide what you are doing about him." Clara looked at her. "Him who?" Mrs. Vale gave her the stare of a woman who had supervised kitchens through 3 decades of badly hidden affairs, family wars, and cooks crying into soup. "Do not insult my remaining years," she said. Clara sighed. "He is grieving." "Yes. He is powerful." "Painfully. He is used to owning every room he enters." "Also yes. And I work here." Mrs. Vale folded her arms. "You may not for long. That does not solve the first 3 problems." "No. But it removes one excuse." Clara did not answer. In truth, she did not know what she was doing about Matteo Varrone. She knew only that he had listened in the ballroom, the kitchen, the pantry, and the council room. He had stepped back when she needed space. He had taken correction without turning cold. He had looked at her not as entertainment, not as rescue work, not as a body to be praised for surprising him, but as a person whose perception changed outcomes. That was dangerous. Being desired could flatter. Being listened to could undo a woman. At 9, Matteo sent word through Mrs. Vale asking whether Clara would meet him in the ballroom. Asking. Mrs. Vale delivered the message with one eyebrow raised. Clara went because curiosity had always been one of her less survivable habits. The ballroom was empty when she arrived. No roses climbed the pillars now. Staff had removed half of them, leaving green wire and fallen petals in white crates. The chandelier was dimmed. The piano stood open, polished and waiting. Matteo stood beside it in black trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled. Without the jacket and tie, he looked less like an announcement and more like a man who had been dismantling his own evening one difficult piece at a time. On the piano lay the torn sheet music. Clara stopped near the doorway. "If this is another council meeting, I resign from whatever position I accidentally acquired." "It is not." "Good. May I ask something selfish?" "You may ask. I may refuse." "I know." He said it so simply that she had to look away. "Ask. Will you sing at once in this room without them?" Clara's chest tightened. "I told you it is not a performance." "Then do not perform. Let me listen." The sentence struck exactly where he aimed, though she did not think he aimed cruelly. The ballroom looked different, empty. Without guests, it was only a large room pretending it had never heard anything ugly. Perhaps the song deserved to live here once without being used as a weapon. "No applause," she said. "No applause. No commentary. No commentary." No looking like a haunted portrait. His mouth moved. "I will attempt moderation." She walked to the piano. The torn page waited under the lamp. Clara did not need it, but she looked at it anyway, at Lucia's note copied beside the printed line, at her mother's breathing mark. She placed one hand on the piano lid, not playing, only touching the dark polished wood. Then she sang the old version from the beginning. In the empty ballroom, the song sounded less like grief and more like a map. It moved from marble to pillar to chandelier, found corners that had held too much silence, and filled them without asking permission. Clara sang the kitchen lamp, the open back door, the promise to come home before morning. She sang Lucia's youth and Maribel's breath. She sang all the rooms women entered through service doors and all the truths they carried out under napkins. When she finished, Matteo did not clap. He stood with his head bowed. After a while, he said, "Thank you." Clara nodded, unable to trust her voice. He picked up the torn sheet music, folded it carefully along the original crease, and held it out to her. "This belongs with you," he said. "It belongs in your archive." The archive failed it. "Then fix the archive." "I will. But the torn page should stay with the woman who returned the line." Clara took it. Their fingers did not touch. Somehow that made it worse. Matteo looked at the open floor. "May I ask for a dance without buying the room first?" The question surprised a laugh out of her, soft and unprepared. "You can ask. I can still say no. That is why I am asking." There were men who could say the correct words and still make them sound like a strategy. Matteo made them sound like work. He was not naturally harmless. He was choosing restraint one sentence at a time. Clara set the torn page on the piano. "One dance," she said. "One. No audience. No audience. And if you step on my foot, I will mention it in staff policy. Understood. He offered his hand. She took it. Matteo danced like a man trained young, controlled, precise, attentive to space. Clara followed for 3 steps, then stopped following and began dancing. There was a difference. He felt it and adjusted without comment. Good, she thought. He could learn. They moved under dim chandelier light, the empty ballroom holding the song's last echo around them. His hand rested at her back, warm through the black fabric of her dress, and she felt the strength in him held carefully enough not to become pressure. You are thinking, he said. Often. About? Whether this is a terrible idea. It might be. She looked up at him. He did not smile. That is your argument? I would rather not lie. Refreshing. Inconvenient, but refreshing. Clara. Her name and his voice had changed since last night. Less formal. More dangerous. Yes? I am attracted to you. She nearly missed a step. He steadied, but did not pull her closer. That was not subtle, she said. I have spent years being subtle. It did not improve me. Attraction after crisis can be confusion. Yes. Gratitude can wear attraction's coat. Yes. Power can make men think wanting someone means they should have her. Yes. She narrowed her eyes. You are agreeing too much. Because you are right. That is suspicious. Also inconvenient? Deeply. His thumb moved once against her back, then stilled, as if he had caught himself wanting more contact and decided permission mattered even inside a dance. Clara felt that restraint everywhere. I am attracted to you too, she said. Matteo stopped. Do not look triumphant, she warned. I am trying not to. Try harder. His eyes warmed. They resumed moving. Attraction does not mean I am entering your life, she said. No. It does not mean I am yours. No. It does not mean I forgive your house for swallowing women and calling it tradition. I do not ask you to. Then what do you ask? He took one breath. Dinner. Somewhere I do not own. On a night you choose. With the right to say no before, during, or after. Clara should have refused on principle. Principle, unfortunately, did not account for his phrasing. Maybe, she said. I accept maybe. Do not look proud. Maybe is not a medal. I was informed of this recently in another context. By whom? A woman with better survival instincts than my pride. Good. Listen to her. I am. The dance ended without announcement. Clara stepped back first. Matteo let her. At the piano, she picked up the torn sheet music. Good night, Mr. Varrone. Good night, Miss Bell. She reached the door before he spoke again. Clara. She turned. The song will not be forbidden anymore, he said. She looked at the piano, the empty room, the man beneath the chandelier trying to unlearn a house. Do not make it mandatory either, she said. He nodded. No. Let it be available. Available, he repeated. That is often enough. Chapter 11. 2 weeks later, the Varrone mansion held a funeral for a woman who had already been dead 12 years. Not a public spectacle. Clara had argued that point fiercely, and Matteo had listened. No donors, no press, no strategic cousins using grief to improve their posture. Only family, staff who remembered Lucia, and kitchen women from the old days who arrived in black dresses with practical shoes and purses full of tissues. Zia Rosaria cried before the first candle was lit. Paolo cried while pretending to adjust chairs. Mrs. Vale cried only when no one looked, which meant Clara saw twice. Matteo stood near the piano, not at the center of the room. That was deliberate. He had spent 2 weeks changing the geography of power in his own house. Staff meetings moved from the back corridor to the morning room. The archive was catalogued with staff testimony included. Serena received a raise and a written apology, though she valued the raise more. Elise was released from her Moretti contract and hired for a legitimate concert series funded without Varrone branding because Clara had said grief should not sponsor itself. The staff dignity policy went into effect. The phrase "beyond your station" vanished so quickly that people became awkward trying not to say it. Clara remained employed, though not exactly as before. Her new title was Household Cultural Archive Liaison, which she hated. It sounds like a ghost with a clipboard, she told Matteo. Choose another. Kitchen Memory Keeper. Done. I was joking. I was not. And so the title stuck, because kitchens enjoyed a joke that came with salary. On the night of Lucia's memorial, Clara wore a dark blue dress that had belonged to her mother. It was too tight at the arms and perfect everywhere that mattered. In her pocket, folded inside a handkerchief, was the torn sheet music. Matteo approached before the service began. You look beautiful, he said. Clara looked at him sharply. He held her gaze. That is not why you matter here. The correction came before she made it. Her heart did something foolish. You're learning too fast, she said. I have motivation. Dangerous sentence. Honest one. They stood side by side, not touching. The old kitchen women sang first. Not Clara. That was her choice. The song did not need her as its gate. It belonged to the women who had carried it before her, and they sang it with cracked voices, uneven breath, and more truth than any polished soprano could have offered. Matteo listened without leaving. His hands shook once. He let them. When the final line came, the whole kitchen group sang it together. Leave the lamp. Come home. No one in the ballroom moved. Afterward, Zia Rosaria placed Lucia's handwritten page into the restored archive box. Clara placed her mother's breathing note beside it. Matteo placed a blank page behind both. Clara looked at him. For what? The rooms we have not listened to yet. That was when she loved him. Not fully. Not safely. Not in the simple way songs pretended love arrived. But something in her turned toward him with the certainty of a lamp left in a window. She did not say it. Not then. After the memorial, people gathered in the kitchen because grief always found food eventually. There were almond biscuits, coffee, soup, bread, and an argument between Paolo and one of the old laundry women about whether Lucia had preferred lemon cake or fig tart. Matteo sat at the end of the prep table, jacket off, listening as if each story were a council report. More than one person cried because he listened. Clara stood near the sink, watching. Mrs. Vale came beside her. There, the housekeeper said. There what? That is what it looks like when a house changes. Clara leaned against the counter. Houses do not change. People do, if embarrassed enough. Love helps. Clara gave her a look. Mrs. Vale smiled into her coffee like a criminal. Near midnight, Matteo found Clara in the pantry. Of course he did. She had gone there to breathe. The memorial had been right, which made it harder, not easier. Right things could still exhaust a person. She stood among flour bins and preserved lemons, one hand on the shelf where Lucia's page had rested weeks earlier. Matteo stopped at the doorway. May I come in? Yes. He entered. Are you all right? No. He nodded. That is not an invitation to fix me, she said. I know. Do you? I am learning. The old answer. The good one. She turned toward him. I loved your sister tonight. His face changed. I did not know her, Clara said. But I loved what the women remembered. I loved that she came down here to sing badly and breathe wrong and be 16. Matteo's eyes shone, though no tears fell. Thank you. I also hated you a little. That surprised him. For what? For having the power to make a room finally listen only after so many women had spent years carrying the truth. He accepted the blow. That is fair. Stop saying fair. It makes it harder to stay angry. Would you like me to argue? No. Then I am trapped. She laughed, unwillingly. The pantry held them quietly. Matteo reached into his pocket and removed a small folded paper. Not a ring. Not a key. Good man, Clara thought, then resented herself for thinking it. He handed it to her. It was the first draft of the archive policy, rewritten with her notes. At the top, in his precise handwriting, he had crossed out Household Cultural Archive Liaison and written Kitchen Memory Keeper. Below it, he had added, no song belonging to the staff history of this house may be altered, performed, hidden, or used in ceremony without staff consent. Clara read the line 3 times. This is very specific. You dislike vague promises. I do. So do I now. She folded the paper carefully. Dinner, she said. He went still. Is that an answer? It is a beginning. When? Friday. Somewhere you do not own. Of course. No black cars at the door. 1 car 2 blocks away? 3 blocks. 2.5. Do not negotiate security like a fish price. 3 blocks, he said. Good. May I smile? Briefly. He did. It was unfair. Chapter 12. Their first dinner was at a family-owned Ethiopian restaurant where Matteo did not know what to do with Injera, and Clara refused to help for the first 5 minutes because humility looked good on him. He learned. He also listened. He asked about St. Agnes, her mother, the factory dust, the choir stipend, the first time someone told Clara her voice was too warm for church and too plain for stage. He asked what she wanted beyond the mansion. Not what job she wanted in his house. Not what title he could create. What she wanted. Clara answered slowly. She wanted a community music archive for working women. Not grand opera, not donor-approved performances, but lullabies, funeral songs, protest chants, kitchen hymns, cleaning songs, the music women carried while doing labor no one documented. She wanted recordings, translated notes, names, dates, context. She wanted her mother's voice to belong somewhere other than memory. Matteo did not offer to fund it immediately. That was how she knew he was paying attention. He asked, what would support look like without ownership? She stared at him across the table. That was a very good question. I wrote it down before dinner. You prepared questions? I prepare for important meetings. This is not a meeting. No. That is why I was nervous. She should not have found that charming. She did. Dinner became 2 hours, then 3. He walked her to her car and stopped with his hands in his coat pockets. May I kiss you goodnight? Clara looked at him under the streetlight. Matteo Varrone could have taken rooms, ports, alliances, revenge. He could make councilmen sweat and guards move with a look. Yet here he stood asking for one kiss as if the question itself mattered more than the answer. It did. Yes, she said. He stepped closer. The kiss was careful at first, almost too careful, until Clara put one hand against his chest and rose toward him. Then warmth broke through restraint. His hand settled at her waist, strong but not trapping. She felt the force he held back, and instead of fearing it, she appreciated the labor of restraint. When she stepped away, he let her. Good night, Clara. Good night, Matteo. She drove home with her mouth still warm and her common sense making several formal complaints. Over the next month, the complaints continued. So did the dinners. Not every night. Clara refused to become absorbed into the schedule of a man who treated calendars like territory. Wednesdays were for her choir archive. Sundays were for her aunt. Some evenings she wanted to be alone, and Matteo learned that alone did not mean angry, lost, or in need of surveillance. He made mistakes. He sent a driver once without asking. Clara sent the driver back with a muffin and a note reading, "Try again." He tried again. He ordered security for a public archive event without telling her. She made him sit through a 90-minute meeting with 3 retired choir directors who explained consent until his soul visibly left his body. He apologized. Properly. Not with gifts. With changed behavior. Clara made mistakes too. She assumed every offer hid ownership. She turned small concerns into tests. She used humor when honesty would have been kinder. She once accused him of trying to buy her archive because he introduced her to a grant lawyer, and only later realized he had chosen a woman who had no Varrone ties and told her not to report back to him. She apologized too. Their romance did not soften the world. The Morettas did not vanish. Dominic fought through lawyers until Bianca Varrone dismantled him in language so polite it required translation to count as violence. The mansion remained complicated. Power remained dangerous. But rooms changed when people insisted on different rules and then wrote those rules down. 3 months after the engagement dinner that never became an engagement, Clara hosted the first kitchen memory recording session in the restored East Gallery. Not the ballroom. The gallery had windows, old rugs, decent acoustics, and enough chairs for women who had spent too many years standing. Former Varrone staff came with songs. Laundry women, cooks, nannies, cleaners, seamstresses, widows of drivers, daughters of housekeepers. Some sang beautifully. Some sang like weathered doors. All of them gave names before songs. Matteo sat in the back. He had asked where she wanted him. The back, she said. He sat there. At the end, Clara sang her mother's favorite kitchen hymn. Her voice did not shake. When she finished, no one rushed to fill the silence. That was Matteo's doing. He had taught the guards, staff, and family that some silences were not empty. They were rooms. Afterward, he found Clara near the window. Your mother would have been proud, he said. Clara looked at him. Do not say that unless you mean it. I mean it. She nodded, then surprised herself by leaning into him. He put an arm around her only after she settled there. They watched the women gather coats, recipes, purses, and histories. Zia Rosaria argued with a former pastry cook about a verse. Mrs. Vale organized leftovers with military command. Serena, now confident enough to tease guards, labeled recordings at a side table. I love you, Matteo said. The words were quiet. Not a claim. Not a performance. Not a chandelier dropping on her head. Clara closed her eyes. She had known he would say it someday. She had not known the room would feel this calm when he did. I know, she said. He made a small sound, wounded and amused. That seems to be a family curse. Women I love refuse traditional answers. She turned in his arm. I love you too. His face changed so quickly that she almost laughed. Do not look like I handed you a port, she said. This is better. Dangerous answer. Honest one. She touched his cheek. I love you, but I am not moving into your house. Understood. I love you, but the archive stays independent. Good. I love you, but if you send security without asking, I will unleash the choir directors again. He went solemn. A fate I will avoid. She smiled. Then she kissed him, not carefully, not with all the rules rehearsed in advance, but with enough trust to let warmth lead for once. He held her like a man who knew strength could be shelter only when it asked the person inside where the walls should stand. Behind them, someone cleared a throat. Mrs. Vale stood by the doorway with the torn sheet music in its new archival sleeve. "If you two are finished rewriting household history with your faces," she said, "this needs a label." Clara laughed into Matteo's chest. Matteo, to his credit, looked only mildly terrified of the housekeeper. "What label?" he asked. Mrs. Vale handed Clara the sleeve. The torn sheet music lay inside, the false printed line still visible, the real kitchen line revealed beneath it, Maribel's breathing mark preserved in the margin. Clara looked at the page for a long time. Then she wrote. The song they tried to use. Under it, smaller. "Returned by the kitchen." Matteo read it and nodded. "Perfect," he said. "Not perfect," Clara said. "True. Better." Years later, people would tell the story differently. Some would say a maid ruined a mafia engagement by singing a forbidden song. Some would say Matteo Varrone fell in love because a woman corrected a soprano. Some would say the Moretti alliance collapsed over music, which was the kind of summary only people who never washed dishes could believe. The truth was simpler and larger. A room full of powerful people tried to use grief as a trap. A maid heard the false note. She closed the wrong sheet music. She sang the real ending. And a man who had spent 12 years listening to the wrong rooms finally understood that love, like history, did not only live upstairs. Sometimes it waited in the kitchen, beside a lamp left burning, until someone brave enough opened the page and let the missing line come home.